100. Hello. Welcome to Taranaki Foodies with Area 41, the tastiest food show on the whole radio station, the most of them. So we are so happy to have a rare lineup of guests today. First of all, let me introduce ourselves. I'm Alina Williams, a local socialite, foodie, and selfie taker. And my co-star is Warwick Foy. He's amazing educator. He's the president of Sober Society of Beer Advocates, and he is also a connoisseur of Asian food.
Namaste.
We have wonderful helpers today. Oli Foy is a rising star in videography, and Nathan Griffith is the co-owner of the business, which is doing social media management. Hello, everyone. And we have really good guests today. Our first guest is Carl Monda. He's nomad, chef, restaurateur. He represents several establishments, State Pasta, Gova Street Bistro, and Joe's Garage. And also we have Joe Emmons and Ben Tarrant, who represent Three Sisters Brewery, the establishment that have been in the social media and media on many occasions and won several awards. So Joe Emmons is the head brewer. He's also marketer and beer lover. And Ben is his main supporter, his good friend, his taster. Hello, guys.
Hey.
I think the first thing you need to listen is the song. And it was a choice by Joe Emmons. It is. Well, yeah. This is very Irish, isn't it?
Yeah, it is a little bit. Yeah. It's a bit of a mix of them. I think it's actually sort of Southern American. Yeah.
Well, it's far from Irish.
But actually, there's a lot of connections with
Are they from South Carolina?
From Carolina,
Chocolate chip.
It's a bit of a reggae. It's interesting how in music and in food fusion works really well because sometimes you take one ingredient from one place, another method from another place, mix it up, and it works really well.
Yeah.
Do you like fusion food?
I do, yeah. I do like fusion food. Yeah, I'd say it's probably not. It's not specifically what I cook, but I really understand. I understand how you come across fusion, especially when you travel. It's how you go to a market somewhere and you might get the smell of something that reminds you of something else. And I suppose as a chef, when you think of food, when something reminds you of something else, you think of other combinations that you can go with. So using the same, I suppose, characteristics and start putting things together. I do like the way unusual things come together.
I sometimes really like how the same kind of a quality, same general idea can be achieved by different methods. For example, spiciness, right? There's so many types of chili, and you can add, for example, garlic or pepper or something. There's this spiciness and tartness. Probably the same in beer. You can give this beautiful home by adding different things. I don't know.
Yeah, well, yeah, comes
In Europe, yes, I don't know New Zealand. New Zealand is poor in a funny way. You're going to kill me. Chocolate draws. I tried the chocolate beer, like the chocolate flavored beer.
Chocolate and stouts, they go really well together.
I don't like sweet taste. I really like sour and bitter.
Something like serious chocolate certainly has those similar.
I mean, you get chocolate mold, obviously, there's not chocolate in it, but it actually gives quite a lot of impressions of chocolate.
Isn't it amazing how when they kill barley, they can produce colour and flavour just by the germination time, the temperature, and
Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah, it's the same starting point. Yeah, pretty much the same ground.
But there's the same fusion between food and drink. Like chocolate, the drink, and opposite you can cook with a beer or wine or whatever. Yeah, absolutely. Creative. It's called collaboration. It's 21st century success, kind of a hack, I suppose, because whatever is done in collaboration.
wow, how many packs of food you got?
Starting with 10. Yeah. Really good number.
So that's pretty much your core range, or we have specials?
We're just gonna sort of brew. Our plan is roughly to sort of brew a new one, then brew an old one. So we actually brewed 26 days now. Yeah.
I wouldn't have guessed that. I would have said probably.
Yeah. No, it's good.
When you brew, do you have a handle like a slightly heavy?
I like
Breathe and
brewing
blow
is
it.
fun, yeah. No, the thing is,
If you're happy where you're growing this, then your growth and effect on the water.
yeah.
The Chinese scientists did the experiment.
Yeah.
Welcome back to Taranaki Foods with Area 41. It is Alina Williams, Warwick Foy, and our wonderful line-up of guests. It's State Pastor, Bover Street Bistro, Joe's Garage, represented by Carl Monda. And it is Three Sisters Brewery, represented by Joe Emmons and Ben Tarrant. Hello, everyone. I really like this music. I originally thought that it is Irish, but Joe said that it is actually South American. Joe, why did you choose this song?
Well, yeah, South of America. So, I love this style of music. It's mostly what I listen to at the moment.
Are you South American?
Yeah. Well, I'm from the South of America as opposed to Southern America. No, I'm not. So I'm not quite sure why I like it, to be honest. But I do like it. I mean, the style is bluegrass style, and it's kind of. I do like the country aspect to it.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's funny, kind of the same joke, and I've always thought. In the last, I can't remember what started off, I did a show on the line picking out of the Bakersfield sound from California, and I started listening to pretty small Americana and country music, and then I was right into it.
There is some amazing music. It's essentially an explosion of different musicians.
I have a lot of girlfriends who came from South America, and they say that they have a lot of hot males there, and they all know how to dance. I like them. Is this has something to do with the drinks as well? Do they drink beer in South America?
Absolutely.
Yes, beer, one, all cultures, and of course food as well. And music and food and drink go together. And Carl Monda is actually son of a very famous person here in Taranaki. Stuart Monda, tell us, how are you related?
Well, Stuart's my dad. That's dad, and I suppose he's always been a musician here, saxophone teacher, played in a lot of bands around town, from jazz groups to a lot of other weddings, celebrations, birthdays, Christmas carols, the works actually. Started a few bands for adult learners, so we're just really involved in the community.
Did he make you to study music when you were little?
Well, I don't know whether you'd say mate. I think you couldn't avoid it.
What instruments did you play?
I played saxophone as well. And, funnily enough, I haven't played for years and years. And when I stayed with my mum and dad during the level 3 lockdown, and that's the first time I picked up the sax again in many years in as well, actually, because I find myself suddenly with some spare time.
Does your mum play it?
Mum does actually. Yeah, she's picked up the sax some years ago now. And she does. She enjoys it.
So, what type of music do you listen when you cook?
That depends on the day. So I guess growing up in the 90s, I do like a bit of alternative rock, grunge, that kind of thing.
Typical boy, I would say.
Yeah, but I listen to a wide range. I don't mind instrumental stuff. I don't mind a bit of reggae, a bit of dub. I don't mind a bit of dance music or electronica every now and then. It just depends on the mood, to be honest. I suppose, but I generally don't listen to pop music. That's pretty much everything else.
Oh, that's pretty amazing. So, as a chef, I always cook when the music is on. I wouldn't call myself a chef. I'm just a very advanced home cook. But chefs always have like a certain atmosphere in the kitchen, and you represent three entities together. So, pasta, you can cook pasta. You cook at the event Gover Street Bistro, and you cook at the Joe's Garage, which is a completely different style of food. How do you do it? How is it possible?
Well, obviously I can't cook all three at the same time.
Yes.
I think for me, I cooked a lot throughout my career, and at some stage I moved from operating single restaurants and moved into an environment where I was responsible for more than one kitchen. We started with one kitchen, and then I was in a position where I was to develop another one, and then another one, which was, I suppose, my portfolio, if you will. And I really enjoy the range it gives. And I suppose from that, I moved into a bit of hotel cooking, And while hotels not my ultimate favorite, I do prefer restaurants ultimately, but it gives you a good range and a good variety over what you can do. I suppose the challenging part is not spreading yourself too thin. And that's, as always, yeah.
Where did you train, Carl?
Well, I trained on the job, to be honest. I didn't go to a specific institution. I just got myself into good kitchens. I think like most people have a good inner compass, if you will. When I applied for jobs and got myself into kitchens, I kind of thought this is the one for me. I suppose probably for the first half of my career, I kind of threw myself in the deep end and jobs that I thought, man, this is probably a little bit above my level. And, I never sunk. So I really enjoyed that challenge. And I suppose that became important for me after probably 5-6 years of doing that is really believing in yourself, to throw yourself in the deep end, to get out of your comfort zone and learn something new. And I enjoyed that environment. Yeah.
That's a Richard Branson approach, isn't it? Say yes and then figure it out.
Exactly. So you just figure out how to do
I
it.
absolutely love the times we live in, and because chefs now have portfolios. Hey, this is so cool. So you were born in Stratford, in Taranaki, and you were such a nomad chef. You traveled all over the world. You worked in the best restaurants around the world. You lived in one of those gastronomic main locations in the planet, which is Dubai. Tell us, how was this journey for you?
The journey was exciting, and I suppose like throwing myself in the deep ends to work environments. It's really exciting for anyone who's traveled when you go to another country trying to figure out how things work. The same thing when you go to another country and you've got to work there, you've got to figure out how does the system work here? Who does what? Who communicates with who? Certainly, there's always a hard way of figuring things out. Certainly working in Dubai, you find that most of the administrators are Filipino. So best off hiring yourself a Filipino administrator to communicate and get things done. So I suppose traveling from place to place, I enjoy it. I enjoy the challenge. I enjoy the different culture. One of the parts that I enjoy the most is the people you work with there, the people you meet. Because particularly in Dubai, you have a lot of different cultures working with you: Sri Lankan, Indian, Nepalese, Filipino, and you learn a bit about what they eat. So when we cook staff with, because we all cook for each other, you eat a wide range of varying food, and so that's probably my fondest memories actually of all these different places that I've worked in, these fancy restaurants and hotels. It's really the people you work with, the cultures you meet along the way.
Every success story in 21st century is a story of a team. So obviously you have a strong team behind you. And unfortunately, Jade Lucas, your wife, is not with us, but we chatted online, and she was such a great supporter for you to come and shine through the radio. Yeah. So how did she find the journey? Because you're the head chef and you're kind of facing the business in a way.
How did Jade find the journey?
Yeah.
Well, I suppose she enjoys travel as well. Her mother's Singaporean, and she's done a lot of family holidays back and forth between Singapore. So she is a real fan of Asian food and really enjoys that culture. And I think soon after we met, she asked me whether I wanted to move to Singapore. So it wasn't so much me dragging her along on our trip, it was her dragging me, which was I said yes, like that. When I was open to the move. So she's really, I think we approach it from the same level. She's really into traveling, meeting new people, meeting new cultures, this kind of thing as well.
In the house, we have a person who started a new movement in New Zealand, which is called We Need a Ramen Shop in New Plymouth. But later on, it was renamed Ramen Life in New Plymouth, and this is now a Wi-Fi.
You pretty much just summed up what the ramen life is. Question, I was wondering what you would cook for the staff meals as a Kiwi.
What I would cook? I cook things that I really enjoy, I suppose. It's funny enough. What I would cook, I would usually have one of my fond memories of staff meals is having a lasagna off once a year, and usually I would battle an Italian in the kitchen if I did, and say, look, it's something I really enjoy. Lasagna, it's probably the ultimate of pasta comfort food for me. I mean, there's nothing quite like the smell of baked pasta in the house. It's a bit like Sunday roast, but the pasta version. And so that was probably my favorite of what to cook. Sometimes it's a bit like a magic box, if you will, because you're left with a bunch of odd ingredients that you have to combine. I do remember there's some interesting stuff there to put up, but for me, yeah, probably pasta, lasagna particularly would be my favorite stuff.
And is there anything that you stole from the other staff chefs that you added to your menu or anywhere else that you cooked?
Sure. No, I would say yes, but more technique and combinations rather than specific dishes. You know, a lot of them I can't remember the name of the specific dishes, but I do remember the flavors.
Awesome, this is real chef's memory. So what is the difference for people who are not real foodies and don't travel around the world? What is the real difference between pasta and noodles?
Pasta and noodles, other than the name, that's a good question. So I would say, depending on the recipe of the noodle, I mean, noodle, obviously, I suppose noodles comes out first and were taken back to
With
Italy
Marco Polo?
Marco Polo, where they were called pasta. And I suppose anything left in its own culture develops in a slightly different way. I'd say a lot of noodles are made without egg. Well, a lot of pasta is made without egg as well. We do make a lot of pasta, particularly handmade pasta with egg. It makes it a bit more rich. But aside from the name and maybe the shape and the way that they're used, certainly noodles can comprise, I suppose, of rice as the starch in it as well.
Yeah, I was going to say pasta would always be made of flour, whereas noodles are made from quite a few different things.
Yes, yeah. Whether that's a technical difference, I don't know.
Powder of the bean powder or sometimes buckwheat powder, and also they do rice and they do some other interesting things. And but I mean, again, fusion happens in the world, and a lot of Italian chefs introduce all these ingredients to the handmade pasta. And those who watch us on Facebook Live or on Periscope Live can see that Carl has a T-shirt which says "State Pasta, fresh, handmade daily." Do you actually handmade all your pasta?
We do, yeah. We have a variety of different pastas there as well, and so we don't use any dried pasta aside from our gluten-free pasta because we don't make it in-house. It's one of these things we have to buy. We have so much flour in the air; it's almost like the dust in our place is actually flour. So you know, gluten everywhere. So aside from that, we make it all ourselves. And we have a variety of different shapes that we can make. We have some very simple hand rolled pasta, which is called pici, which essentially that doesn't have egg in it at all. We just has flour, water, and olive oil. So it's about as simple as it gets. Hand rolled, and it's probably the closest thing to a noodle we've got, actually. But it's really delicious. It's like a thick, more rustic spaghetti, if you will. Almost like it looks like a little bit of a worm. But and then up to things, probably our most technical, we go to ravioli or ravioli. Or plin ravioli, which is pinched in it, has a super rich dough. It's made of 100% egg yolk, so a really high ratio of egg yolk to make the dough quite wet. It's a bit more complicated to handle because it wants to stick to everything, but if you dry it up, it doesn't stick to itself. So I guess that finding that perfect balance that it can stick to itself without any washes and things like that is the challenge of that one.
I remember seeing this video online how an old man in China makes this loads of noodles and they're huge and they're so long. And I think it's a perfect time to listen to our second song, which is called "What's So Long" by Temple by Tejo. Wow, did you see these videos, by the way? The old man somewhere in a deep village somewhere in Asia, he was doing this rolls of noodles and he was putting it to dry on something that looks like a yes, like a dry clothes dryer. And oh my gosh, he was so fast and full of stuff, and he produces so much. It's like a little machine, like a little thing. It's pretty amazing. I love doing pasta in Ukraine and Russia. We have our own pasta, which is called pelmeni or vareniki. Ukrainians call it vareniki, Russians call it pelmeni. And Ukrainians have more variety. We have a sweet pasta. So we have like dumplings with cherries, dumplings with strawberries, and sometimes we have it with like a cottage cheese type of thing. Right? It's a denser that vegetarians use. So yes.
It must be very time consuming to make all this pasta.
Yeah, I suppose so. But you know, I think it's people get into the rhythm. I suppose with any cooking, you know, we want to do everything as fresh as possible. One of the big challenges with running any team is that most chefs out there are making lives easier. How can we make more? How can we make it possible? But whereas I think the angle I approach everything with is like, how can we make it better? How can we make it the best it can be? It's like trying to tell these people that you're at home, like everything is good at home. It's not that mashed potato, put in the fridge for 2 days, in the microwave. But I mean, you know, and so I'm sure places do. So, you know, if we make mashed potato, which obviously we don't get if we do it at the bistro, you make it every service. You know, you make a chocolate tart, you bring it out of the oven, and it's just cooled down enough so it's just set and you can just cut it and it's still warm. Why should someone have to have it inside the fridge for a day? Or, you know what I mean? So,
Common sense thing.
yeah, common sense, but it's
What is your most popular sauce?
for the pasta.
Yeah.
The most popular pasta is two. There's either the chicken ravioli, which is the thin ravioli, or the prawn fettuccine. Prawn fettuccine is always a crowd pleaser.
Really?
All the garlic chili, all the tomato. Yeah, that's right.
Full food as well, isn't it? It's really hard to make.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. One thing we probably don't do, which defines us, is we don't use cream anywhere. Like, you know, I think we try to stay away from, while we're not specifically trying to be an Italian restaurant, you know, we sort of, we really don't want to come out and say, well, we don't want pepperoni on the Friday night, we don't want red white tablecloths. You know, we try to play local music, you know, this sort of thing. You know, we're not trying to focus on a specific region either, but it's important for me to try and get to the root of proper technique. And, you know, it's all about, you know, fresh pasta and starch. It's all in the toss of the hand to be picking up those sauces and getting away from the masterized versions of everything. And yeah.
I have a soft spot in my soul on heart for males that can cook. So whatever you said, it was, I pictured it. It was really cool. But I mean, it's a survival skill. I teach my son how to cook because I don't want him to be dependent on anyone when he's older. Welcome back to Taranaki Foodies with Area 41. We have a rare episode today, and we talk about pasta, we talk about beer, and our guests are chef, which is nomadic chef, restaurateur from State Pasta, Boba Street Bistro, and Joe's Garage, Carl Monda, and we have Joe Emmons and Ben Tarrant from Three Sisters Brewing. So we just listened to a very interesting song has been chosen by Joe. And Joe is kind of such a DJ in the house. He knows a lot of music, and it is a very versatile music. What is your favorite music, Joe?
Yeah, it's this style of music, it's bluegrass. Which is it's quite interesting. Yeah, it's from sort of the southern states in Kentucky, sort of Alabama, Mississippi, those sorts of Carolina. I don't actually know. I think my mum was into this style of music. Not thinking about it actually. I mean, my parents spent quite a lot of time in Texas, and my wife spent a lot of time in Texas. Actually, I met my wife in Texas. She's actually German, Sarah, but we met in Texas, and there's a lot of this. That's also the southern state, and there's a lot of this type of music there.
Do they say that everything is bigger in Texas? Is that true?
Oh yeah.
Oh my gosh, I need to go there. So, kudos to Sarah Emmons, wife of Joe, and we met before, and she's a really supportive, really good people, hard worker, and she just does things without actually asking. She's very good supporting. So, wife and husband work team. How do you keep peace?
That's a good question. I do as much of the work as possible. That seems to work.
I'm sure she's listening to the radio. What?
Well, yeah, that was it. I mean, she used to do it. Yeah, she used to do a lot more. I mean, we used to do it.
So, how do you separate what the responsibilities? Who's responsible for what?
I mean, I'm responsible for anything really associated with the beer itself. So I do,
So you
pretty
try.
much. I mean, she's helped with making some of the what's called adjuncts, like Belgian candy syrup. Stuff you can do in the kitchen. She's helped out with. No, that's what's her problem.
So we have Warwick here, who is the Society of Beer Advocates president, and we have a lot of guys here in the room who I'm sure love beer, and my husband listens to the show. He loves beer. So tell us, what makes a good beer?
Well, that's a good question. It's not too difficult. We're just saying about food. It's freshness. Which is always a tricky one because you want to get your beer out as freshly as possible to people who drink it, but that's part of the challenge actually.
basically opening the tap and just
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's, yeah, because I mean, that's going to be one of the good things about having the bar that we're opening is that we'll be able to get the beer from the fermenters to the taps really in a really fresh way. But what you do find is you put it in bottles and you distribute it. You don't have any control over that. It leaves you, and you don't know. Somebody can pick up a bottle a year later, and it's getting a bit tired by that point. You don't know how it's been handled,
And you get the blame for that.
and you get the blame for that. Yeah, it's right. Yeah.
I'm not sure if you were going to ask this question. I mean, but I'll ask it. It's about the journey that you've had,
Yes.
which is really quite interesting.
Yeah.
And I won't say much of it, but I know we were in a brew comp together, and now you're in a brewery and I don't.
You
we're
missed your
also
chance.
in the right?
Yeah, that's right. My background is engineering. Yeah.
So tell us briefly how you went from winning a brew comp in Uranui to opening a brew bar at Dennis Street.
Yeah, well, that's been a long journey. Interesting. Yeah, so we won that competition, and I think Ben and I brewed that beer at Mike's Brewing. About 5, 6 years ago now, and I think we were here the most of the time. We won. So, and what happened was obviously we got pretty excited by that win actually. So we sort of rushed out and we're like, oh, let's start a brewery. This is amazing, you know. And got a few quotes and like, but what happened was, we carried on doing some homebrewing. We carried on. We were just starting with a little 20-liter grain bottle at that point. That wasn't big enough for us, was it? So we got a 50-liter Braumeister, which does more beer. I don't think that was necessarily enough beer either.
How long does it take you to drink 50 liters?
Not very long. Depends how many of you there are.
But
But
you commercial on the ground.
we went commercial. We started off commercial with the Braumeister, yeah. Because what happened? So we were doing it as a hobby, and even after like a year, it was probably I think a year, 18 months after we won that competition, people were still coming up to us and going, "Oh, when are you going to make that beer? You know, you want to try that recipe?" And we're like, "Yeah, we should do that."
It wasn't really a recipe. I
Yeah.
don't remember how it was.
We brewed it a few times. It's still awesome. One of our go-to recipes. Yeah.
I remember how we met first. I had a cooking class at one of the beautiful locations in Akura,
Oh, yeah.
and you were providing the drinks. And I remember how enthusiastic you were. I was thinking, this is a job, and he's so happy. Is that the beer? What does he add to this beer? So sometimes the brand is, well, we have to be face of our brand, and it's really important. So tell us, why did you call your brewery Three Sisters Brewery?
That was Sarah's idea actually. Yeah. So Ben, Charlie and I, we had a different brewery. And what sort of I think, and there was a point where it was getting a lot of work, and I think it was at that point that we kind of Sarah and I decided to sort of take it on. I think we had a few chats, and we were like, you know, I think Ben and Charlie were like, well, there's a lot of work here, you know what I mean? And we were like, okay, well, we'll go for it, and we thought we'd go with a new name at that point, and that was sick because we got 3 daughters. And so Sarah came up with the name Three Sisters.
Wow, and I remember I had a photograph of her at the Hourglass, and she was with 2 girlfriends, and I wrote Three Sisters Brewery. It was a perfect illustration for it. So yeah, very, very interesting. And there is a lot of craft beer in the whole New Zealand and the Taranaki in general. How you have defined?
Well, it's different. I mean, it's interesting. I mean, in beer, it's impossible to be original. You cannot think of anything. I mean, you just cannot think of anything that someone hasn't brewed before. So, and it's like you were sort of mentioning earlier, Lena. It's kind of about the branding, and it's about what you're about. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, certainly we try and make the best beer we possibly can. That's very much a focus. So, you know, we've always gone on the sort of ethos that if we make the best beer we can, people will drink it. So focus on the quality, and the rest will come, and that's work for us.
Yeah. So I just imagine, for example, when I'm in the kitchen, I cook and I always try, and then sometimes I think, oh shit, this is not really nice. This was my thing. I think that doesn't happen in a brewery as well.
Sometimes, not often, but yeah. Sometimes you try something a bit experimental, and you're like, well, I'm not sure about
If that happens, you can. There's various ways of knocking it off with something else.
Yeah.
You can change it up and.
Yeah, you often see that from some very limited edition. You think, oh yeah, I see what
I know Ron from Mike's Berry told me that he had a little, I don't know what to say, an accident happened one time. They just tweaked it and called it something else and actually became very popular beer.
Yeah.
And another time they brewed an English bitter, which is one of my favorite styles of beer, but it doesn't sell in New Zealand and it didn't sell for them.
Yeah.
So they just changed the name and it started to sell.
Branding is important as anything. So tell me something. It's a question for Carl. Do you think that beer goes well with pasta?
Yeah, of course. If you like beer, for sure. Yes, it does. I think for me in particular, once you put I guess a little more chili or more spice into dishes as well, I think it's harder and harder to match wine with it to find something that doesn't get bowed down by the spice. So for me, once I get something a little bit spicy, I'm always reaching for a beer.
And what is your personal favorite, Joe? When you drink beer, what do you like to have it? In Russian, we have the zakuska, a dish, something that you eat with the drink. So it doesn't have any other meaning except the food that you eat with the drink. So what is your zakuska for beer?
It's a really hard question, actually. Depending on what day you ask me, I'll give you the answer. So,
I should bring some Russian food to you.
Right now, I'm really like, I guess, I really like smoked beers.
Smoked
Smoked beers are quite interesting.
I never heard of it. Tell me more about it.
Well, you use smoke malts. There's a number of different types of smoke malt. There's peat smoke malt, nucleus smoke malt. Those are quite accessible in New Zealand.
Wow.
And there's a lot of traditional styles with smoke malts as well.
Is the trend a new trend? Is it where the
No, they're traditional.
Wow.
Yeah. So we do smoked beer, but it's a very traditional recipe.
So recently in the newspaper and stuff, they said that you're moving to former Taranaki Savings Bank building, TSB, which stands for Three Sisters Brewery. Brilliant idea. I think that it was one of the best marketing move I ever heard of a brewing company. So again, whose idea was that?
That was my idea, but it's purely coincidence that on the initials, we just saw the building and we're like, thought, this building is amazing. Well, put beer in there, really cool.
So when you came to the studio, you were all covered with white dust. I suppose it wasn't something that you can snort, and it wasn't from the kitchen. So at what stage is the development of the building now?
It's getting pretty. We were just doing some of the glycol piping. We almost got it closed up and almost ready to commission. So the fermenters are in. They're hooked up. It's getting pretty close. Our contractor is doing an amazing job. Plantec.
Yeah. It's like is to cool the fermenters or keep it at
keep them. Yes, exactly.
So could you give us a little rundown for the nerds out there about the brewery, the volume and so on?
Yeah, sure. So we've actually bought a new brew house. It's on its way. So hopefully it comes on time. It should land in Auckland yesterday. So it should be nice. 600 litres brew house. And we've bought 2 600-litre fermenters as well. And we've got our old 2 300-litre fermenters.
That's made me realise that we can help in the education of people, which is one of the goals of SOBA is please don't call them vats. It's not vats, it must be a brewery, they're not vats. Fermenters or tanks, aren't they?
We love education, and especially anything that involves alcohol and anything like that, or food. So you did one of the most amazing fundraisers I ever heard in Taranaki. So you sell the rights to make the beer and name the
something. The name one of our beers, we said that if we did a crowdfunding campaign, and we said whoever got us over the line has the rights to name the beer.
So who is the lucky person?
There's a guy called Hayden Steele from Auckland.
How lucky Steele? So
yeah. So he hasn't told me what his name is.
Oh, that's really cool.
Does it get to choose the style as well?
No, that wasn't part of the
Oh,
deal to the name. So
But I mean, people can have a T-shirt and also a special like
yeah. So
Fun.
t-shirts and glasses and caps. We were selling some merchandise and bar tabs. People were pre-buying bar tabs, and then supporters glasses as well. So if people bought over a threshold of a bar tab, they would get the merch and they would get a supporters glass, which gives them 20% bigger than the other glasses. 3% cost.
tell us when is the deadline on you launching?
Oh, hoping for the 15th of December, which is not very far away, but
Or can I have to come to through?
Who came up with all the little quick things you did for the fundraising campaign?
yes, I put a request on Facebook and just said, who's got any ideas for crowdfunding? And pretty much all of those.
People are really, really
Yeah.
clever. Looking about interesting ways of being resourceful and interesting ways of using your resources. So Carl decided to turn one of his restaurants into the event venue, right?
Yeah, well, I think it was the Glover Street Bistro when we took it over. It is being used as an event venue, but we are planning to refit and relaunch as a bistro proper, a la carte restaurant, along with events in February. So that's our next project up there on the corner. So that's something to watch out for. And I think for me it's really exciting because I suppose when I left New Zealand back in the early 2000s. I went to London, and that's where I really cut my teeth in classical cooking. Worked for in some pretty hardcore kitchens, and I look back at that as the real, that was the foundation of my career, really, and where everything spread from there. So it's a real style of food that I suppose it's in my heart because of those reasons. And back in the 90s and 2000s, things were a bit more analog. And so I think back about that food, before Instagram, before selfies, before Snapchat, all of this sort of thing, and so I really want to get back and explore that style of food. It seems like, every bistro that comes out these days is all about neo-gastronomy and this, that, and the other, and I really want to take it back to proper sauce making. Get back to the classics and how we make them properly. So you'll find dishes there. Bouillabaisse, steak tartares, dress crabs, steak frites, and these are the things that I suppose are right in my heart where I learned to cook. And it's hard to find good classics these days. I don't know whether anyone does a real solid apprenticeship in sauce making anymore. I'm sure they do here from time to time, but it seems like everyone's.
So Joe's Garage keeps the same menu as it used to have, and state pasta is mainly as pasta of different sorts. What's the menu of the Glover Street Bistro?
Glover Street Bistro. So I suppose when you think about a classic bistro menu, it's not too large. Say 5-6 starters, 5-6 mains, maybe 4 or 5 desserts, and it's certainly it's quite simple: starters, mains, and desserts. I think the interesting part about a classic bistro is it doesn't have to specifically be French. I think it's not unusual and it's not out of place to find dishes that, for example, a tagine on the menu in a bistro. Now, I wouldn't go so far as fusion and mixing it up, and we really try to get to the bottom of the roots of where these dishes come from. But I think a bistro doesn't mean that we have to cook French, but I guess our roots are in traditional classical cooking.
So if you have to explain to a 5-year-old what's the difference between a restaurant, cafe, bistro, or eatery?
So this is like a 51-year-old.
So it's an interesting question because I think, for me, first and foremost, when we put a restaurant together, something that I try to live by here is that, say your most inexperienced person in the restaurant really needs to be able to explain it to my parents in as few words as possible for them to understand. So, at State Pasta, we have fresh handmade pasta. Everybody knows what that is. Now, when we get into the difference between what is a bistro, what is a brasserie, what is a cafe, these are where the lines get blurred. I suppose typically a bistro, when you take it right back into it, was probably a landlord who owned a building, probably provided 1 or 2 dishes in an ad hoc restaurant downstairs. A brasserie, which I suppose was a beer hall originally, served a slightly more market cuisine, and then you had restaurants up from there. But these days, the lines are so blurred. And if you look at some of the best restaurants in the country, French Cafe in Auckland, certainly not what you would call a typical cafe. But so it's really, it's hard to define. The lines are blurred. That's a tough question.
I think it's one of those words that people absolutely love to use, and it came from France. But France, it actually came from Russia because when there was a war a long time ago between Russians and French, and Russian soldiers were asking for food, and they asked to do it quick. So the word bыстро means quick, do it quick. So quick food, something that's still already pre-cooked and something that you can deliver really, really fast. So yeah, there is an interesting connection, isn't it? So how do you develop the new items in the menu?
How do we develop it? Well, I think for me, it comes from the sourcing and the ingredients. And this is probably one of the parts of the job that I really like, is meeting people out there who have the same passion for producing ingredients, whether it's strawberries or whether it's a particular shellfish or a particular beef, and bringing that and their story to the restaurant as well. Because this is the most exciting part of my job. And I think speaking directly about it this week, the best thing I've eaten this week is a pew strawberry.
Oh,
Have you had them? Just then, like you can get them up to room temperature. That is a banging strawberry. One of the best I've eaten.
awesome.
Yeah, so it starts with me as like selecting these ingredients, and then you have to balance the menu out. You need to. It's important in the bistro, in Taranaki, that we have a pretty damn good steak. A bloke's fish, if you will. And we've got some really fine beef that we've sourced out of Ashburton. It's some of the best, I suppose, some of the best beef I've eaten in this particular grade for a long time as well. So there's some really, I suppose New Zealand is really developing some small artisan producers out there, and so finding these, bringing them to the restaurant, and bringing the story to the restaurant as well.
Oh. I think it's a perfect time to listen to the third piece of music, and Warwick is going to tell us about it.
Oh, this was on a movie that I watched, movie soundtrack that I watched, which I can't remember the name of, but it seems a Shekaro, which means it's a man.
Lovely. Wow, so this is the end of the show. Believe it or not, we've been talking for 45 minutes. This was easy, wasn't it? After this break, I'm going to wrap up and just say a few words from our sponsor, which is Area 41. And is there anything you want to add? Like any event that's happening, anything that you want to promote or basically people to know?
No, that's all good. We talked about opening and it's all new.
Awesome.
Yeah,
That's all good. What about you?
I think for me it's just probably what's coming up is the relaunch of the bistro. So we're actually doing quite a bit of renovation down where the kitchen area is, which is a little bit of a hangover from the Irish pub, which some people will enjoy. Yes, yeah. So, but it's really bringing the kitchen in front of it. Turning it back into a restaurant.
I think one of the first days I lived in Taranaki in that bar was called the ballroom, I think, in Ballroom.
Right,
It was
yeah.
ball rugby player.
Yes.
Goody.
It was 96 when the Taranaki won the Shield against Auckland. And he was the star, and we sat there, and the third day I was in this place, and people go, boom, boom, boom. We can't hear the ball.
Yeah.
And then they ordered steak.
Yes, yeah.
And Joe, maybe you would like to say about how you represented Taranaki region in Auckland at the food show?
Yeah.
One question, please.
So interesting, it's Karen and Gibeon.
Yes.
Do they own the three?
No, they've left the business.
Oh, they're out. Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
so myself and wife, we've essentially taken over from them. Yeah.
So they're in Monaco still.
No, I don't
They never owned one.
Oh, they don't.
So they're partners, but I don't know.
So you own the three now?
Yes, in partnership with Brunswick. So
Oh,
as
okay.
they did in the past, yeah. So essentially, for whatever reason, they've sold their share in the business, moved on to other things, and yeah, we take it over.
Everybody who Facebook post is very happy.
Did you sell your back passage from the restaurant under you?
Yeah, but that gets tricky because I think to wholesale stuff you need different licensing. There's a lot of EPI regulations and things like that. So yes, to sister restaurants out there.
Welcome back to Taranaki Foodies with Area 41, the most tastiest food on the most FM. So we are about to finish our show. I just want to give final words to our guests, who are Carl Monda, nomad chef, restaurateur at State Pasta, Gover Street, Bistro, and Joe's Garage.
Yeah, so thank you for having me on the show. I really enjoyed it. And just what I'm really looking forward to in the future is we're working on a new, at the end of the year, we're closing out this room and refitting, and February we'll be relaunching as an a la carte restaurant up at that end of town. So I'm really excited about that. I'm really excited about developing the menu of the classics, if you will, and just bringing a bit of my experience and skills and what I've learned over the years of cooking, and really bringing it home to the family. So share with them.
Taranaki Foodies will be there. And Joe, you represent the Taranaki region in Auckland. Just a few words about this before the wrap up.
Yeah, we went there with a bunch of other food companies to the Auckland Food Show, and it was facilitated by Venture Taranaki, which was awesome. They really helped out with the design of the stand. I think that really makes it accessible for some smaller companies like us to do that, because otherwise we just wouldn't be able to. So really appreciate the support they give us there.
Awesome. Thank you very much for coming, and thank you very much for telling us the date, 15th of December. Again, Taranaki Foodies will be there. We have quite an interesting, very interactive group. And few words from our sponsor, Area 41 on Broad Street. If you're looking for a corporate event or just get together with friends, look no further. They have a mezzanine floor. They have a special place where you can get together and be quite isolated with your group. And they have a new creative menu, and they add some new items to the menu, and they have a ruby chocolate dessert that everyone must try. So thank you very much for being our sponsors, and support our guests as well, which is State Pasta, Gover Street Bistro, Joe's Garage, and Three Sisters Brewery. Thank you so much. Sorry, it was late.